All right. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. So we have a really exciting program for you all. We have a fireside chat here with Dr. Julianne McCall, the CEO and managing publisher at the Journal of Science, Policy, and Governance. And then we also are joined by Dr. Tepring Piquado, the executive director at the National Science Policy Network. And this will kick off our call for submissions for the joint JSPG and NSPN summer standard issue. So first of all, I just want to give a really brief introduction to our speakers here today. We have two global experts here in science policy. They both stepped up to lead their respective organizations, the Journal of Science Policy and Governance, as well as the National Science Policy Network within the last few months. So we have two brand new leaders here with us today. And I'm really looking forward to the chance to chat with both of them about some of these upcoming events that we have, the joint summer standard issue, as well as also providing a space for them to talk about what they're both envisioning for JSPG and NSPN going forward. So they're both going to have a chance to talk a little bit more in depth about their backgrounds here, but I just want to briefly set the stage for you all. So Julianne took the helm of JSPG in October of last year. So in addition to her role at JSPG, by day, Julianne serves as the director of the California Initiative to Advance Precision Medicine under the Office of the Governor. As if all of this wasn't enough, Julianne also teaches some grad courses in science policy at UC Riverside and UC Davis, serves on the editorial board of the California Journal of Politics and Policy, occasionally directs the International Brain Bee Neuroscience Olympiad for high school students, which is across 50 countries, by the way, and is the co-founder of TEDx Fulbright, the Sacramento Brain Bee, and the chapter of the Sustained Dialogue Campus Network for Racial Justice. So here we have Tepring, who assumed the role as NSPN's first executive director just under a month ago in March. So she was previously senior director for state and local relations for Western states with the U.S. Chamber of Progress, the chief policy director for the California Issues Forum, senior policy researcher at RAND Corporation, a professor of ethics, policy design, and policy in action at Pardee RAND Graduate School, and president of AdSteam, a nonprofit that she co-founded to advance diverse science and technology workforce. So a bit about myself, I'm the director of programs and events here at JSPG. By day, I work for the MIT Washington office as a senior policy advisor covering biomedical policy, budget and appropriations, and let me admit someone, there we go. Budget and appropriations, as well as also our MIT student policy engagement. So I want to point out something that is a little uncanny here. We have all three of us are neuroscientists by background who all did their science policy fellowships with the California Council of Science and Technology. So I think we're just we're here to take over science policy. I think that's just, what's happening here. But moving along here, we want to take some time to introduce our summer standard issue. We have released our call for papers. The deadline is going to be May 26th. I've included a QR code here to our submission information, and we are going to be really wanting to hear from students, postdocs, policy fellows, early career researchers, and early stage professionals to submit articles. We're taking all formats that highlight policy opportunities and audiences that center justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Just a quick note about JSPG. We are a nonpartisan organization that is looking to have an educational impact in science policy. And we've been around since 2011. So we've been doing this for a little while, but I think there's always something new that we can learn in these issues. The National Science Policy Network is a nonprofit that's representing early career policy advocacy and diplomacy groups. We've been doing a joint issue for, I should have looked this up before, like how many years have we been doing this together? But it's been, we've been doing a lot of joint issues in the past and looking forward to being able to do it again for this summer. So some upcoming events to keep on your radar. Obviously, we have this fireside chat here today, but I also want to point out we do have a science policy writing workshop that's going to be coming up in May. So keep your eyes open for when more details are coming out on that. And we're also going to be having a panel that'll be coming soon on how to take your ideas from the journal into the real world, into some effective advocacy. So I am going to move over here now to this fireside chat with Dr. McCall and Dr. Piquado. And we're really looking forward to being able to ask them some questions. Then we'll open it up to you guys to see, like, what are your questions for them? You know, do you have any questions about what it would be like to submit for this issue? How a little bit of background on their careers and what they're looking forward to with NSPN and JSPG. So stop sharing there. And we'll move on to some just a few introductory questions. So first of all, Julianne and Tepring, first of all, can you tell us a little bit more about how your own backgrounds really led you into your roles leading NSPN and JSPG?
Julianne, do you want to start?
Happy to. Thank you so much, Hannah, for the gracious introductions, to Tepring for truly taking on the helm of this national network and partnering on this summer standard issue. We are beyond thrilled to elevate this early career researcher, early career professional network that we care so deeply about, both here in the US and well beyond our borders. So my background, as Hannah mentioned, is as a neuroscientist. I spent 16 years in neuroscience research, really inspired by my kid sister's diagnosis of a number of neurological diseases and disorders, which honestly, we continue to add to the list. And it made me aware that the generation of knowledge was not enough, that research to action pipeline was actually much more diverse and rich than I had the advantage of seeing from inside the walls of a research lab. I thought maybe education, right, would be the silver bullet that the world needed to see positive change in how science and technology was applied to real world issues, recognizing that better education alone is not going to do it, that you really need this full, whole ecosystem, holistic ecosystem that includes the policy angle of scientific advancements and applications. So I was thrilled to find my way to, as Hannah mentioned, the California Council on Science and Technology, as all three of us did at one point in our careers. And the rest is history. Every day I work for those most underserved and underrepresented communities in California, and now through the Journal of Science Policy and Governance, right, those underrepresented voices across the science policy ecosystem. So whether they are rural communities or communities in countries that don't yet see themselves as leaders in some of these science and technology topics, those are the communities that I'm trying to help kind of course correct this research and honestly science and technology policy ecosystem to engage better in a more sustainable fashion. The Journal of Science Policy and Governance, JSPG for short, right, we are at the cutting edge. We're communicating to policymakers through the ideas represented in the op-eds, in the policy briefs, policy memos, the book reviews, the technical assessments, the workshop and conference summaries, right? Where science is seeing progress possible and providing that evidence base for policymakers to move in the most optimal directions. So my background, again, as someone who saw my little sister's experience where science had something to say, but not the only thing to say. We were so dependent on the resources of community. That's what I hope to give back through my career, is that, again, holistic understanding of where society is right now and how we get to a place we want to be. Happy to hand it to you, Tepring. Thanks.
Cool. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me and partnering with NSPN on sharing the stories from our communities. And so that's so important. It's so rewarding. I really appreciate it. So thank you for the opportunity to serve our scholars. My background is very similar. And as you were saying your years, I was like, I'm at 16 years a practitioner as well. So I started out in neuroscience because I met a young man when I was teaching at this school that taught phonics in an alternative way. It was to people that couldn't learn phonics in the traditional way, which is usually 99.6, 99.4 across the world, learn how to read. quite easily, but there's this group of people that don't learn how to read easily. And I was just like, what's going on here? And I want to be the scientist that helps people learn how to read. And so while I didn't go on to learn how to help people who learn how to read, I did study fundamentally how we process verbal language in environments with distracted speech or other noises and distractions in environments and across the age span, from young adults to older adults. And I did practice for a very long time in the lab and in a policy institution. But I also had this press for helping directly people. And so I also applied to CCST, California Council on Science and Technology, and had the opportunity to learn how a bill becomes a law, how as a scientist, policy is shaped by those who engage in it. And my background is just a little bit different and gave me a little bit different perspective on the policies that were passing through the California legislature. And it was so rewarding that I think it was still a press in my life to continue that work, because I think it's so important that we get more diverse perspectives in our policy making. It makes policy making better, and it makes it for a broader community when we have a broader, more diverse community participating in that. And so sort of the fusion of, I did also practice a little bit of government relations or lobbying or political policy consulting, whatever you want to call it. And with the fusion of my research background, my policy practitioner background, my educator background, when I saw this opportunity just over the winter break, I was like, ooh, this would be an amazing opportunity, because fundamentally, I really want to spend the last part of my career helping the next generation, the talented next generation of scientists and engineers and technology and innovators really have an influence in a variety of ways, whether it's writing, as we're doing for this edition and in partnership, or if it's actually being an in-house lobbyist where you're advocating and you're advising for the rules and regulations at your company. But it's really an opportunity to teach early career, early professional scientists how to use science as a trusted and needed input into the policy system. So we look for opportunities to educate, to train, and to inspire the next generation. And so that's what we hope to do here today. And we can't do it without you. So I really do hope you participate. I really do hope that you submit articles and go out and be the practitioners, be the change makers, because we really need you. So thank you for having me here, and I look forward to our conversation today.
All right, that's great. So first of all, I want to really give you guys the chance to talk a little bit about where do you see NSPN and JSPG really going from here? You're both new, you're both have recently joined these organizations in these directorship roles. Kind of where do you see NSPN and JSPG going forward from here?
I can take that first. Journal of Science, Policy, and Governance, we're 12 years old now, and we've gone through a number of phases. I feel like we're at the precipice right now in this, JSPG 4.0, as I call it. I'm only the fourth ever CEO of the organization in its 12 years, to really help bridge that gap, right, between the ideas and the implementation of those ideas. To put that hat on as a practitioner, as Tepring was emphasizing, and recognizing the real world in which we all live and the politics, the political angle to each of these topics, to not come in with that, Pollyannish idea of, as soon as the right people have the facts, then they're going to recognize for themselves what the solution is. Now, we actually have to think of it right, from various different angles, from the financial angle, right, the economics of these policy change ideas, from the morality and the ethics. Right, consider they might not be your ethics, but how would members of the community who are not like you approach what you're suggesting, right? And to anticipate and address those particular concerns, right? There's also just the feasibility, right? Beyond the economic side of things, the feasibility, and of course, right, the scientific integrity, right? How secure, right, is that evidence? And how likely is it to change? Maybe it's a dynamic, right, emerging science. And at that moment of publication, it's accurate, but being humble enough to recognize that, you know, things might change, that the proposal, right, the pitch, the idea that you're providing is based on existing evidence, and how policymakers can stay ahead of that curve rather than be just constantly in response mode. So that's kind of JSPG 4.0. This is right, filling that valley of death, you know, the term that we so often hear and use in the research world. There exists a valley of death between, again, that research and science world and the policy world. And so how do we firmly bridge that gap for sustainable progress?
Yeah, so NSPN, National Science Policy Network, if I use that NSPN acronym and not everyone knows about it. So I'm the first executive director, which doesn't mean that I'm the first to create this. So it's been in existence for about 6 years, established and founded and grown by a group of 4 graduate students at the time that have now entered into their postdoc and early career stages, or I guess that is postdoc, and led by a few other leaders along the way. And so this is the first time to have an executive leader title, but it's really standing on a foundation of what it's supposed to. So it's a science policy network. And what we're trying to do is build out the network in a variety of ways. One, in plain training. What are the training opportunities that are needed to educate the next generation? But then after the education occurs, there's still a role to play at that next level. Is we know what we're doing, we're practicing it on the first or second level, and we have to go into the opportunity to, I'm sorry, there's someone at the door. 1 second.
No
Okay.
worries.
So
Living in the real world.
So the next level is making sure that at a peer level and at an organizational level, there's a hub. So we're a connector. So we hope that NSPN shares opportunities and shares opportunities to experience each other in real life with symposium, with regional events, so that we can really connect with our training and backgrounds to each other to influence policymaking on a grand scale, nationwide and ultimately worldwide. So that's sort of the next iteration of how to get from a group of about, right now we're about 1,300 people that are loosely connected, into a much broader community of hundreds of thousands of scientists across our nation that are doing amazing work in a lot of dimensions, whether it's writing, whether it's research, whether it's industry regulations, whether it's enforcement, or writing and generating those policies. Whatever type of policy is being created, there should be opportunities to connect and collaborate and expand. So that's sort of the next generation, the next iteration, the evolution, firmly established by the creation of the network in the beginning.
Thank you so much for that. And to, because both of these organizations, so we've worked together in the past, I'm really interested in, can you talk a little bit about, with this joint summer standard issue that we're putting together, what are you really looking to see this partnership come together in this issue? And kind of what are you looking to see our 2 organizations work together on for this issue, or even beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is now the 3rd partnership between NSPN and JSPG, and we're delighted that it's the open issue, right? Every year, JSPG offers 2 open issues whereby we are gathering and encouraging submissions across all science and technology policy areas. And NSPN is really right at that expansive growth stage, right? You're attracting such extraordinary keynote speakers. You are integrating yourselves into policymaking spaces unlike we've ever seen before. So we're excited, right, from the JSPG side of things to leverage one another's expertises, right? With our network of authors, right, our past authors in the over 1,000 now over the 12 years that we've been hosting the journal, and connecting with those practitioners through our events as well as co-authors and as expert panelists to help guide and demonstrate where gaps still exist and are currently critical to conversations in state houses, at the federal level, in local government, right, around the world. We see NSPN as the driver of much of those conversations at that ground level where there are individuals just passionate about making that change we all wish to see, and providing this vehicle to contribute to their toolkit to advance their ideas. Tepring, I'm curious how you respond as well.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right on our partnership. And for me, I just really saw this as an opportunity for you all who have ideas, who have writing, to get a little bit of training on, the next workshop is like, how do I really form an idea and write it down on paper so it's going to be received well to an audience, and to have that opportunity to go through that practice that you may not always get in whatever job you're doing right now. And so it's kind of like doing a bicep curl, right? And so you do it over and over and over again. You get a little training, you get a little guidance, but it's always better with that coach. So this was an opportunity that we could provide quite easily to partner with the experts, to partner with JSPG, and you all to give a little opportunity to have something, show up in writing. And that also helps advance careers. And so not only the training, but also the advancement is really important, because getting the training is just the first level, and it's really advancing and developing and becoming and being in positions where we not only survive, but where we thrive. So I'm just really excited for your all trainings that you guys have developed with your years of expertise of over a decade. So I'm really grateful and thankful that you're willing to partner with us to provide that at this time.
The honor and privilege is all ours. And I'll also add, right, there's a common theme that binds our organizations and right, current and past leadership as well. And that's a real focus on the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, right? Acknowledging that there are systems at play right now that were never meant to lift all boats, that we have maybe a unique opportunity right now, right, to course correct some of those systems. And that's only going to be possible through partnership to amplify that approach ever further. So we're constantly inspired by you at NSPN and just how front and center you are with that Jedi approach.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And I can also say personally, as someone who was a JSPG author, back in the grad school days, it was that coaching that you mentioned of like working with the editors and thinking about like, how can we improve our paper for publication in JSPG? And then not only that, but being able to then take that with us as like a trainee, of being able to say like, I've done this work, and it really makes a big difference. So I'm just going to put out a plug for like all of you students, all you early career researchers and science enthusiasts of this is a really good opportunity for you to really flex those muscles and to get that experience that you can take with you into the future. So kind of touching a bit on that, I was wondering for folks who might be on this call, who might be interested in submitting a paper, what words of advice do you have for them as they're thinking about what they want to write about and how they want to go about it?
Yeah,
Tepring, do you want to answer first?
I'll take this
Yeah.
one because I feel like you're the expert and it'll be a recency primacy kind of effect. I just want to really impress upon you that this is an opportunity that you should take advantage of because we all exist in a science ecosystem, and JSPG is an ecosystem. And so while the topic that you write about is important and should be important to you, it's part of the building blocks of you being able to participate in a larger science ecosystem. And so, you know, it's a first opportunity. It's not what you have to be held to for the rest of your life on that topic, but it is an opportunity to start being a participant and a contributor to the science ecosystem. So I just really encourage you to take a stab at it and to submit, and then I'll turn it over to Julianne.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you provided that background of yours as a JSPG author, right? You are an ambassador on so many levels, as well as a NSPN member, also from your graduate student years. We are at JSPG, well, across the science and engineering landscape, we all got into these really hard STEM fields to see change, right? Maybe there are a few theoretical scientists and engineers who, right, might express differently, but I would venture out to say that for the most part, we all got into these, difficult disciplines with a passion for solving complex challenges. And recognizing that this is, right, JSPG was created, as far as we know, we are the only journal in the world built exclusively for amplifying the voices of students, fellows, early career professionals, and early career scholars. And we define that very loosely to be inclusive of those of you who have pivoted into a policy career, later in life than the average professional would be. But I think parallel, right, aligning with the nature of science and technology themselves, right, where those of you at that early stage of your careers or training, right, you see things in a light that the establishment, right, is incapable of detecting at this stage more often than not. And we want your ideas to be helping to shape the conversation, whether by providing that evidence or providing an op-ed, right, with a community perspective from your own lived experience or the lived experiences of those around you. That publication, right, as much as we are giving career talks or panels at conferences, those are all such ephemeral events that don't quite compare to the value of having a written and peer-reviewed publication that will help to define, right, the next step of your efforts.
That's great. And so, I'm going to ask one more question here before I turn it over to the audience. And this is a little bit bigger picture. We're kind of zooming out a little bit here, but I'm curious for each of you, I think a lot, like you said, scientists, we came in here because we want to make change. And I think we're at a point in our society where more scientists are starting to really think about this. And so I'm interested in hearing from both of you. Kind of, first of all, what are things that are keeping you up at night in terms of the science policy landscape? But then what are the things that get you up in the morning that get you excited about this field?
I'm going to go first because you're so eloquent, and then you'll wrap it up for us. The things that keep me up at night are that we're not doing enough. I'm not doing enough, right? And there's, never enough time in the day. There's always more on my checklist. And I do wake up in the middle of the night being like, oh my gosh, I didn't prep for our fireside chat. Did I bring the right clothes? No, not that. Are enough people going to get the information? Are we going to share the opportunity so it's to a broad community where everyone feels like they're able to join and participate? The real press for me that keeps me up at night is, how do we get information and opportunities out to everyone that wants them, everyone that needs them, and everyone that hasn't even heard about us so far? Which is also what wakes me up in the morning, right? I'm so excited to engage with every single person on every single day, and, re-engage with people that I haven't talked to in forever. I'm so excited that through our network, our broad network, there are things that just pop up and reconnect us. And I'm really excited about that because, in the latter part of my career, it's really about serving those who are still, inspired and engaged and energetic to do it. And so that's what wakes me up, is that there are so many people out there that are seeking services and that need to be told about services and opportunities. And that wakes me up in the morning as well.
Yeah, similarly. Oh my goodness, that question of, are we doing, or how could we possibly be doing more, certainly resonates with me as well. I was listening to an interview by an entrepreneur in the electric vehicle space when he made this comment that just because the world needs everything to go electric right now doesn't mean that A, it's happening, B, it's easy, and I'm paraphrasing, right? C, that it's a linear path, and D, that everyone's going to agree with you on the, maybe not even the mission, but also the implementation of that mission. So that keeps me up at night, because I don't think we have enough systems thinkers, right, who look across the entire ecosystem and have that 30,000-foot understanding of all the levers. I joke that I'm always asking anybody tied to the CIA to please create like some kind of algorithm that tells me, right, how best to use my time, right, and how best to use my office's time, right? What is the thing that's really going to move the needle at the end of the day? Because it might be different than what we can possibly see from our own vantage points. So that's what keeps me up at night, is not having that 30,000-foot view, right? Or at least not being so confident that we are investing as tactfully and strategically as we possibly could to efficiently move in those directions that, again, we all see, that many of us need to happen. What gets me jumping out of bed in the morning is encapsulated in a quote by California state legislator Evan Lowe. During the Trump administration era, he was the chair of the California Legislative Caucus for LGBTQ issues. And, at a moment when the Trump administration was trying to cut down on language that reflected LGBTQ issue areas, he was asked by a journalist, how do you, avoid just, melting into a puddle of despair? Again, I'm totally paraphrasing and adding my own little style. And he more or less said, all of that energy that I would spend being frustrated and, just mournful of the situation and the era that we're all subjected to in this moment, I take all of that energy that I would spend being frustrated and I pivot toward figuring out, what are we going to do about it, right? And building that community that over time sustainably sees the progress that our communities deserve. So that's often some of the first thoughts of my day, as I find that news podcast to listen to while I brush my teeth. But yeah, it's a very fine balance, right, of getting enough sleep and not being kept awake by the issues that are so heavy on our hearts, and pivoting that energy to actually do something about it.
I think that is quite the call to action. And with that, I would really love for members of our audience here to, raise your hand, ask your questions, and to have you guys take it away. All right, Chanel.
Hello. Thank you so much for hosting this fireside chat. It's so wonderful to see you, Hannah, Julianne, and Tepring. My question is if you could speak to your favorite example or a top of mind example, a handy example of when a author submits, a piece of writing that's accepted, and then it led to a really exciting and sort of unexpected opportunity. What I'm getting to is that some people may feel a little bit, I feel this, I'm a little bit nervous about submitting, and it can be really stressful, and the whole peer review process, it might be something new, but what's the light on the other side? Can you speak to just an instance where, oh my gosh, the connections that were made or the doors that were open? I would just really sort of like to hear about just the various ways that this can manifest in really amazing outcomes for authors.
I'm happy to take that one. As someone's been part of the journal now for over 2 years, and not just since September or October, when I took the CEO role. Just in the last few months, 2 of our authors have been showcased as leading voices. Forgive me, I won't be able to remember her name, who published an article, a manuscript last summer. I believe it was last summer's standard issue on mental health, and her work was featured at the World Health Summit in Berlin last November, all about maternal mental health and policy adjustments to expand maternal services, preventive care to avoid mothers getting too far along in their mental health journey before being offered proactively supports and services, not to mention the impacts of the children and the adverse childhood experiences that come along with that. We also had another author whose name is Dr. Christian Johnson, who wrote again in our in our winter standard issue a year ago on the policy implications of a space elevator, acknowledging the geopolitical practicalities of having a very vulnerable, tiny little string that connects and transports items to and from the International Space Station or another orbital body. And he was chosen to give a talk, a 20-minute talk at AAAS this year in Denver. And I wish you could have all been there in the audience. The energy was so rich in the questions that he was being asked. At the time, he was working for RAND. He now works for a nonprofit called Democracy Now!, I want to say, a journalism outfit. And having those conversations about, real issues and bringing up those topics that are not yet part of these conversations. I have to say maternal mental health is not an original idea, nor is the space elevator, but the unique angles through which they approached the topics. Maternal mental health was in a Canadian science policy context. The space elevator was in an American, but international partnership context. Those were unique as far as I've seen so far, especially coming from those literally on the ground of working on these technologies, working on these science issues and giving it that scientific spin.
And I have no idea. Thank you for sharing that. But one of the things that you should recognize is, like, as you write and as you get clarity of thought, clarity of writing comes, it can launch you into those speaking opportunities, at TED Talks or, regional TED Talks at universities. And so it's an exercise, it's a practice that you should get used to as you launch your career in whatever different spaces, but it is a building block. And so just flexing that little muscle right now for the next couple of weeks, I guess 2 months, is really, no, 4 weeks is really helpful for career development. Yeah.
I can add to, actually, one of my grad students at UC Davis has not yet submitted this to Journal of Science Policy and Governance, but her policy memo that she wrote for the course, and I can almost guarantee I have absolutely, our editorial process is highly independent, utilizing editorial board of 35 to 45 again, independent members of the science and technology communities around the world. She wrote this policy memo, and as part of the development of the memo itself, I encouraged her to conduct an informational interview with someone working in the area of adding folic acid into cornmeal that's used to create corn tortillas. There's a particular issue with birth defects having a higher prevalence among Latino, Latinx communities. And there's a pilot project, I can't remember where in the world, that she was able to point to saying, this is easily scalable, right? In places like California, where we still see birth defects, right, that are highly concentrated in certain communities that are under-resourced and underserved. And it's now being championed by the Assembly Health Chair, a Health Committee Chair here in the state of California, made the news. I read the news without knowing that she had submitted it and had been an advocate for this topic area. So especially at the local government level, those of you at the federal level, right, consider state and, in the Japanese context, right, prefecture and local government scale, all you need, right, is to, at the right time, have the right vehicle, right, for an idea, having conducted that, right, the legwork that allows you to present that evidence in the right way at the right time. And here we are. I'm reading the news about this master's student, second-year master's student at UC Davis, Carolyn Subramanian. I can mention her name. I'm just so proud of her. That's the kind of change that we want to see through our policy writing.
Thank you for sharing those examples. It's really energizing to hear these success stories. Appreciate it.
And I'll also add on, I've been in conversation with some authors from our past, our most recent issue that came out on civic science, and we are working on ways to make sure that we can highlight our authors in some of our events and programming, so that they have the chance to take a little bit about their papers off the page and into a session like this, and be able to really spotlight the work that they did to write this paper. So that's something that we hope to be doing. We've done them before, and we hope to continue that, of the chatting with our authors and giving them the chance to talk about their work. So yes,
that's on the list, right?
Yes,
so
it is on the list.
Two of the authors, we're going to do our best to highlight in opportunities that we create for you as you go and launch other opportunities from submission and acceptance too.
Yes. All right, and I see a hand up from Matthew.
Hi, thank you all so much for this talk. This has been really interesting getting to hear about your vision. And so I will say I am a former JSPG author. That was really great. I did that at the end of grad school and during my AAAS fellowship. And was one of the leadership council members of NSPN last year as the advocacy chair. And so I guess I am asking this a bit in my NSPN activity in mind, since I'm so active in NSPN, but I'm also curious to hear about this on the JSPG front. So you talked a bit about your goals, but I guess I was maybe a bit more curious, maybe a bit more specifically, I was curious, Tepring, what were your goals for NSPN in the next year? What do you want to build on, and maybe what do you think we're missing specifically? And Julianne, also feel free to say that in the JSPG front, since as we say, like our organizations are very kind of intertwined.
Well, I did an AMA already, and I feel like you should have come to that on the spot now. No, let's see. So in the next year, we already announced, after the very successful first sort of big return to in-person symposium at UC Riverside, hosted and led and organized by a wonderful group. It inspired me to have already set plans for the Seattle 2025 symposium. So that is one concrete thing, is I hope to have a great audience for 2025. Along those lines we're developing, redeveloping, envisioning the curriculum so that it is focused on creating trusted and sought after scholars, right? And so we're developing our programs with scholar-centric so that it's trusted and sought after. And so we're doing a period right now. If you were to email me right now, you'd see popping up on my away messages, please pardon the delay. We are going through 2 weeks of really thinking about the strategic vision and the defining roles and responsibilities right now, as well as doing my proper onboarding. And so there are some activities and focused on, training the next trusted and sought after scientists. So that's sort of the year goal, is those two things, is like, what do we need to do to make the curriculum aligned with those? And what was your second question? So it's goals, and then
It was kind of relatedly, it's like, maybe what are our organizations missing at the moment?
Oh, what are we missing? So one of the things that we're just touching on is, and I was actually in conversation with Julianne about this, is there's definitely the early career, and maybe even the early career, the first trainings. But there's not a lot to attract the professionals, early seniors, or late, mid, early seniors into the organization, which early career people need so desperately to get those jobs, to get that mentorship, to get that sponsorship. And so we're like, how do we grow that group of people that are part of our network to have that pipeline? Not necessarily like, ESAL, engineers and scientists acting locally, but where are we on the pipeline and the growth of the network on the pipeline? And how do we attract more senior people to share their opportunities, share their wisdom, and support the next generation? So we're still centered on the early career, but where can the network grow to give you guys even more support?
I'll add to that. We are entirely aligned. But right at the moment, right, you have policymakers, policy practitioners, like the recent Secretary of the California Health and Human Services Agency. His name is Michael Wilkening. He then supported the Biden administration in the White House, and was California governor's, I want to say, senior advisor on digital innovation. Has really done a lot in his rich career. He gave a talk about 7 years ago and made the comment to I think an audience with many academics, and somebody asked him, why, with so much health and medical research happening in California, surely the California Health and Human Services Agency is, in lockstep with those researchers. And he responded in this way, that he would estimate 98% of all the research being done in the state of California in health and medicine has no bearing on health policy decision-making, right? And if you take this like simple example that I like to use, right? If you have, $20 million as a policymaker to allocate to help people with Parkinson's disease, right? The neurological disease that affects your gait and your ability to move through the world. There is no research to tell you whether $20 million of a Parkinson's disease research program would be more fruitful than to spend the $20 million building ramps up to every public building in the state of California, right? You are not only comparing apples to oranges, you're comparing apples to, I don't know, sequoia trees, right? It's so, right, we don't have enough policy research. And so my vision for the future is to help foster that culture where policymakers not only see the value of research, with much more policy research, right? I think that needs to ramp up. And I think we're providing that vehicle whereby policy research can be amplified beyond just academic writing. But also kind of foster that demand side, right? Where policymakers seek out, right? That they feel like their bills, their draft bills are incomplete without citing some research to back up their ideas. So that's our path forward. It's ambitious for sure, but you have to have a vision, and that's what we're working toward.
That's great. And then Takahito.
Thank you. Thanks for organizing this workshop. It seems like I'm not in the screen. I don't know why, but my question. It's okay. Can you see me? Okay, thanks. My question is about. I wanna submit a paper. It's kind of sort of a comparative study between Japanese policy and US policy, but what kind of context will be appreciated by editors or reviewers? Is that at the institutional level comparison or funding agency or federal national level? Which level of policy analysis or position paper will be more favored by this channel? Thank you.
That's such a thoughtful, targeted question. And Dr. Kamada, thank you so much for being here and contributing. JSPG, we are an open opportunity journal. So from the local, where there's evidence demonstrating an approach that has been successful and solves a problem at the local level, right? There is translatability and scalability, right? Often the case, but you need to often start with that evidence base that is so concentrated in one area while recognizing, opportunities to scale or translate. The national levels, right? It is a frequent theme across JSPG. Occasionally we'll have international comparisons. More often than not, it's targeted to one locale, but I wouldn't discourage you from addressing any level that makes the most sense for the evidence base that you have, right? We always want those main messages to be anchored by the evidence itself.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, Laura.
Hi, thank you so much, Tepring, Julianne, and Hannah for having this conversation. I think this leads a little bit to what you were talking about, the evidence-based research and policy. So I know that as a researcher, I'm in the discipline of cancer immunology and also related to AIDS-related malignancies, but I do have an interest in gaining experience, and some of that background has been in policy-related research and understanding and analyzing data to understand and provide evidence-based research on increasing the Latino Latinx representation in the physician workforce, which is in, increasing diversity in the workforce. And I'm also interested in the biomedical workforce. But I guess I'm just thinking about like any general advice that you may have also in terms of using some of that gained experience and using that to push forward, and also being able to get into the science policy space, or even a combination of those two things, and how we can work together to be able to make that efficiently. And that's just something that I've been thinking about right now too, because I'm also at a career transition phase.
I don't have an answer for that. I guess, yeah, no, I mean, that's a you guys question. How do you, was the question like, how do you translate sort of your background, your lived experience, but also your research, and use it, put into a policy paper? There's going to be a nuts and bolts webinar, right? So how to come with your idea, centered on the theme, kind of in a journalistic method? And I don't know that answer.
Yeah, and so the benefits of a open access journal means that, Laura, you are welcome to go scan through and understand for yourself the diversity of formats. And we really are open to all formats, right? Even if it's not listed in our more common formats like policy memos, briefs, op-eds, book reviews, technical assessments, workshop summaries, etc. If you're not familiar with the ethos, logos, pathos approach to writing, right? There are certain kind of common steps in writing for a more general audience, and that is establishing your credibility, whether it's through lived experience or study. It's providing the evidence, but also providing that emotional side, right? Like, why is it important? So I can highly recommend that you look into that. I know that we're already 2 minutes after the hour, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but our writing workshop will dive deep into that approach. And it's never just about writing, right? It's always about, like, how do you think of policy solutions and challenges in the first place? And that, translating into the written form is, one aspect of it. So I highly encourage you, a little plug for our next program next month. But yeah, the ethos, pathos, logos kind of balance is often the recipe to, compelling writing.
Yes, stay tuned. Details will be coming.
Yeah, there's time to explore and learn and just come up with your ideas, brainstorm them all, and then we'll work together.
Yes. And I know, as was stated, we are at the hour. Thank you so much to everyone for joining. Remember, May 26th, that is our deadline for submissions. Put your heads together with your colleagues, and we look forward to seeing what you all have to write. We're going to be having a series of events coming up, both for this issue, as well as also some follow-up events coming from our previous issue on civic science with the Rita Allen Foundation and Sigma Xi. So stay tuned, and to have a great rest of your evening or afternoon or morning, wherever you are located. And thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Thanks so much. Nice chatting with you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hannah, thank you for this wonderful conversation.
Yeah, thank you. This was
a real joy to spend part of the day with you.
Yes.